What is up? My name is Matt Workman for Cinematography Database, and in this video we're going to be continuing our series on getting started with Cine Designer. We're going to be looking at the spotlights today, and if you're an OG Cine Designer user or you're just getting started, the spotlights in R3 are completely reworked. I've unified all the spotlights to be the same. They have new controls for Haze and for other things as well. So we're going to load up some spotlights, light with them, and then hopefully by the end of this you'll be all set to start using them in your work. So let's get right into it. Let's load in our R3 physical library. So you'll see that I have added everything to mine. This is everything currently offered for R3 physical. We're going to be adding a lot more, but all the spotlights are basically at the top. And I realize how few I have. I basically only have the ARIs and like a source 4. I used to have a dado. So I will work on adding more of these pretty soon. So let's bring in something like the L10. I just like this light because it's kind of modern. Something that you can do here, you right click and hide tree, is that I could put this here, which is kind of cool. If you don't need the materials, like we're not going to need materials today. I'm not going to need the timeline. I'm not going to animate anything. So you can get rid of this stuff. And then if you want it back, you just go back over here and load up your startup user space. Just kind of a note. And then now you can have access to this stuff right here. So if you're in like layout phase, which you call it in 3D, you can just have these down here and you can just always be like selecting them. So that's pretty cool. So this is our ARRI L10C. It's a humongous light actually for what it is. It's kind of like, I kind of think of it like a 2K, kind of like a 2K LED light. I don't think it's even as bright as a 2K like at all, but it is color tunable if you get the C version. And what I want to stress to you here is that this is a Fresnel, and most of these are replicating Fresnels where there is a lens size and aperture. So if you look at the Cinema 4D beam, it makes sense, right? Like the beam is coming from here. And to make this happen, the actual Cinema 4D light inside of this is actually back here, which hopefully makes sense. So if we had put this light up front, it wouldn't look right. The beam wouldn't be accurate to having a lens. And that's something that I can essentially hack in Cinema 4D physical, but it's not something I can hack right now using Redshift. Arnold makes it possible. But anyway, that's probably too many details for you, but just wanted to show that here. And so what we have here, and I don't know if this is programmed correctly at the moment. I'll have to go back and double check. I can change the light beam angle. So this is a very narrow beam and this is a wide beam. And you can see that the virtual Cinema 4D light is actually moving all over the place, but it makes sense for the lens right here. So this is going to change how wide the beam is. And I guess I should probably put this on a stand and start lighting with it. But also happening is turning the light on, the color, how bright it is, which has no bearing to the real world yet. I can start to roughly put in numbers, but they're not, there's no system yet for me to make these like real world accurate. Pan and tilt happening here. And this is new, which I don't know if I have anything that's going to require this just yet, but it can undersling itself, which will be important in the future as I start to build out some of the new stuff. I needed to have that possible. And then we have some haze controls, which we'll look at, and the materials, which I will eventually separate out. If you want to change your materials of the light, which you probably never will. But I have to because I'm going to start supporting multiple render engines, and that makes it very easy for me. So let's put this thing on a stand. And where's the stand? So this is technically a junior mount, so you should use the combo stand. I also need to make more stands, a lot of stuff. And you want to put the stand in first and then the light under that, and it'll rig itself up very nicely. So I'm going to load in a pre-built set. I tend to use this living room a lot. I like it less and less every day that I use it. I want to make some new ones, but it does work for like loading something in super fast. So that's pretty good. I'm going to call this key light. I think it's helpful to start giving them kind of like, you know, nicknames, if that makes sense. So we'll do something like this. I'm gonna move it back here, and let's bring in a person. I still don't have very many people, just the one. For Redshift, which we'll get into some of those tutorials very soon. I've been using 3D scans, so I don't even really use fuse characters anymore. They look fine, but it kind of kills the illusion of reality when you start using them because they're just not, you know, they're a little bit cartoony. So let's set up our render settings before we get into this. We're going to go up here, and today we are using physical. And you really don't need GI at all when you're doing this to start, so that's fine. let's just leave it like this. So no GI for spotlights. It's really not necessary until like the very end. I always want to stress that for people who are having performance issues. If you're not running like a super fast computer, just don't turn on GI until the end. Unless you're like, you know, specifically making bounce light setups or something like that. But for direct lighting, we don't need it. So here we are. So just focus the spotlight on her and let's turn it on. And I actually figured out a way to make the lights look a little bit better in viewport. I just haven't done it yet, like how to make the brightness correct. But so what we can see here now is the beam of the light. And if I make it like 5,000 lumens, which is not accurate to the real world at all, but what happens is that as I make the beam tighter, it gets brighter. And as I make the beam wider, effectively the light is being more spread out. The same amount of light is being more spread out, and it's actually darker on them, and that's physically accurate. So I find that pretty cool. So let's check out our render here. Rip some threads on the thread ripper. So that looks pretty good, actually. So the beam, a little bit of softness on the edge. I could actually change that, but I don't expose those controls to you. I just have a little bit of softness, and the shadow looks pretty good, and they're a little bit bright. So I'm going to stop this. My physical render usually takes a long time to stop for some reason, but so that's too bright, so I'll make it like 2500, something like that, and get maybe a better angle on it. I'll just come in, we don't have to see the light, and render. And so this is why I really don't recommend using GI. It's just boom, really quickly to get something that you're looking at here. And if you have a fast CPU, you're resolving to something like this really fast. Now, the lighting looks very theatrical. It's not bouncing. It's not realistic, but you can at least figure out where you want to put the light before you get into the fancy stuff. So the shadow looks good. Looks pretty nice. So let's look at some of the new controls here. I'll back out. They're not new, but they're just unified. They're a little bit different. So we can change the color here. So this isn't a color tunable LED technically, but all the spotlights in Cine Designer are color tunable just because why not? And what else can happen here? Not much, but I'll give you a quick render just to show that the color does work. So it's nice if you want to have like a couple different spotlights and you want to figure out like, you know, what color is the backlight, what color is the front light. You can design some sort of like, you know, club lighting and stuff with that. So we'll stop that. Pretty straightforward, nothing new there. Really, but just wanted to show it. So what is kind of new is the haze. So there was a couple different ways. There were a couple different ways of adding like volumetric lighting to these spotlights, but this is the way that I recommend and the ones that I baked into this. So we're going to enable haze, and you can see immediately that there's this new UI component to the spotlight, and you can actually turn it off and on here. So this hides the lights if you want to do that. So filter, turn it back on, in which case you want to see it. So this is not physically accurate, but what we have now, I guess I'll just hit render. I'll render this. With haze on, you can now see the beam angle of the light. And so that's very cool. So it's like you haze the room. That's why I'm calling it haze. It's not exactly what it is in cinema, but that's how I'm relating it back to the real world. But what you can do is you can tell Cinema 4D where this haze ends, which it could be realistic or it could be very unrealistic. Like you can selectively haze parts of rooms, but in general, the whole vault, everything gets hazed. But you know, if it's a really big space, there's an argument to say that it wouldn't. But what we have that's new now built into the spotlights is this haze distance. So it's in centimeters again, so it's centimeters from the light. So I could have the haze end here, which I don't know what that's gonna look like. Basically an itty bitty beam, but then it dies. The haze doesn't make it into the room. And that's what we're controlling per light, which isn't really physically accurate. If you haze the room, every light should react to it, but in Cinema 4D physical renderer, volume lights and area lights will not affect the haze. It's impossible. In Redshift it can, but with physical, you can only use spotlights for haze, so that's what it is. So realistically, we'd probably do something like this, and this is where it started. I'm just making this number large, so you can see that it's now going to haze the entire set that we see pretty much, and past it a little bit, and we'll see what this feels like. I think this is like where it started. Yeah, so that's probably pretty realistic. And so that's how you see the beam angle. I'll turn that off. And I typically do something like this. It's kind of cheating, but it's enough to be able to see the beam of light without it actually hazing the set. So that's cheating, but again, this program for now is really more about visualizing what you want it to look like. It doesn't have to be perfectly realistic. So here's our kind of like, you know, theatrical behind the person shot where you see the spotlight on them. little bit of haze. Oh, I would want more haze than that. So what we're gonna do is, from this angle, the haze looks different from different angles, is we're gonna turn this up. So this number is really sensitive, so if you go to like 1 or something, even 1 is gonna be kind of bananas. It comes in at 0.1, it can be 0.01, it can be low depending on where you want it to be, but I'm gonna keep putting it higher. So I'll stop that, and where is it? I'm gonna do 2. 2 is usually very high, and I'm gonna extend this out a little bit, like this. Let it go. Looks pretty cool. That's not bad for Cinema 4D Physical, so I'm gonna stop that. So that is pretty much the gist of the lights and the updates. So all of the spotlights here, which is not that many, I realize, they all have this new internal spotlight object that I built. And so they're actually very good spotlights. I'm very happy with them. They respect a lens radius, a Fresnel lens radius, or a parabolic reflector radius as well. And beam angle's nice. They have soft edge shadows built into it, which I like. And the new unified haze control, I've simplified it for everybody. You can only do it this way with these lights. If you want to do it with regular Cinema 4D lights, you can, but I try to simplify these more than anything else. And I'm very happy with these. These are much better than the ones in Redshift. Right now, the Redshift spotlights suck. They suck a lot, but everything else in Redshift is really good. And that's how we control these. Is there anything else to talk about before we get going on this? I think that might wrap this up for the spotlights. If you have any questions about them or anything like that, hit us up on the forums at cinematographydb.com and or leave them in the comments here. I would prefer the forum. This YouTube channel, I don't read the comments all that much. So I'm gonna send us off on a beautiful render here. Oh, you know what I wanted to do right before we go? I am gonna turn on GI for the people that are new and just are going to benefit from seeing this workflow again. Global illumination, we're going to go to QMC. Light mapping, go to low. This QMC light mapping is for people that have pretty fast computers. If your computer's a little bit slower, use a Radiance cache. But QMC, my computer handles it just fine. I'm going to go to 4440. And the last thing I'm going to add is ambient occlusion, which adds a little bit of darkness to things that are close together, so like floors and feet touching grounds and stuff like that. It's kind of a hack, kind of a cheat, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with cheating. And do I want to see the beam? I guess I do. So let's end it here and get an idea on how this is. So this is a 720p frame, and we'll rock out. So as we render, not too bad. Not too bad, a little bit grainy, but we're still in the first pass. In the next video, what should we do? We've done animation. Oh, just to note as well, the digital Sputnik lights are implemented now as spotlights, I believe. So they're gonna all be able to be hazed. So anyone using digital Sputniks, you can haze them. I wish that you could haze area lights in physical. You just can't do that right now. Maybe they'll update that, not sure. What else is there to show? Oh, we should do some space light stuff. Next video, we're gonna light with some space lights and the Kino flows. We'll do Kino flows and space lights in the next video. So with the 1950X Threadripper with one light in a simple scene here, pretty convincing spotlight. I'm pretty happy with this. I like it. That's kind of, it's a weird haze. This is not a realistic haze, but it does give you the visualization you would need to show the director or the gaffer, whoever needs to know, hey, we're hazing this set and there's spotlights. So pretty happy with this. And all of these spotlights have the same exact internal spotlight. In R2 and R1, they were like all different versions. Now they're just all the same. So hope you enjoyed this video. Get out there and start lighting with some space light. I'm sorry, with some spotlights. And next video, Kino flows and volume lights.